As is often the case with me, I'd like to start by telling you a story. It was the late 1980s, and I was a business graduate student in New York City. And so I was taking courses in business leadership and finance. And I've got to tell you honestly, those courses were both rigorous and they were often quantitative. So I was looking for what I hoped would be a less demanding course or two that I could use to smooth out my schedule. And as I looked through the course catalog, I found a course that I thought would be the perfect candidate. It was a new course in a relatively new field, nonprofit management. Now, the purpose of the course was to take basic business principles and apply them to some social problem and then offer solutions. I thought that sounded really interesting. And I'm going to be honest with you, back then, I also hoped it would be easy. I'll tell you right now, I was completely wrong about that. One of the requirements of the course was to find some social issue and then apply those business practices and come back to the entire class with solutions. And I chose the issue of homelessness. It was of interest to me because every single day as I walked into the university, I passed by dozens and sometimes hundreds of homeless men and women, mostly young men, huddled on these grates. They were HVAC exhaust grates that ringed the entire perimeter of the university in New York. And what they were doing is they were huddling there to keep warm against the cold. It bothered me that just outside the gates of one of the wealthiest universities in the entire world were all these men and women, and they were desperately clinging to each other and just trying to stay out of the elements. And I wondered, what on earth has led to this? And what role could I possibly play in helping to address this issue? And how could I apply it to the class that I just signed up for? So I started spending time. I'd sit on the grates next to them. I'd tell them a little bit about myself. They'd tell me a little bit about them. And they were incredibly open and honest and frank about who they were and how they got to those circumstances. And what I heard are the issues that are self-evident today, but at the time, 30 years ago, they were transformational to my thinking. They told me about petty transgressions with the law that had permanently caused them to be disqualified from either employment or opportunities around housing. They told me about living with the stress of being on the street. They talked to me about addiction. They talked to me very frankly about living with mental health issues. They talked to me about racism. And what surprised me was the worst of the racism they experienced, it wasn't perpetrated by the people on the streets of New York. It was perpetrated by the institutions of government that were supposed to lift them up and help them out. And I heard them tell me stories as well about people that they had once loved and who had loved them, who'd given up on them. They told me about families scattered and lost. And they told me with unrelenting bitterness about people in power who looked the other way. And what interested me the most, and the part that was the most poignant for me, and the part that really remains with me to this day, is more than anything else, they told me what it was like to feel invisible amongst millions, ignored, and looked through. And that was haunting to hear them tell me about that. I was reminded how many times I myself had walked past them with barely a second thought. And I still remember the shame I felt at that recognition. I still feel it today, over 3 decades later. Why do I tell you this story? I tell you this because that class which I hoped would be easy, which turned out to be a lifetime journey, taught me something about myself, and it taught me something about the world around me. It taught me that I have a thread of humanity in me. It's woven in me, it's woven in you, it's woven around all of us. And that At the end of the day, we all have universal needs that draw us together, that bring us together as people, of wanting to be seen, of wanting to be loved, of a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose in the community. And that we all want to have a sense of hope in the future and a bedrock faith that despite our differences, we're going to find a way to get there together. I had inherited this burden of knowledge, and I couldn't unknow it. And the course of my life since that time has been focused on using that knowledge, what there is, for some greater sense of purpose. And you understand that. I think every single person in this room understands it, and that's why you were asked to be here today. You are invested in the state of the city of Portland, and I thank you for being here. So, after I received my MBA, the story continues a little bit, I turned down the jobs, which I thought I was being the best prepared for. Some of them were pretty good jobs, I don't mind saying. My professors, my fellow students, and even some members of my family, they were really confused about that decision, and some were just flat out disappointed. But I wasn't. I knew that I could have been successful on Wall Street, or at least moderately successful, but I also knew that that work would ultimately be meaningless to me. It would be unfulfilling. And I knew that the most important work in my life would be dedicated to solving larger social problems, using whatever skills and whatever gifts I'd been given. And that's the challenge for all of us. We have different gifts, we have different skills, but we should all be stepping forward, and all of you in this room already are, and I thank you for that. So I did a 180. Rather than going to Wall Street, I went to the John F. Kennedy School of Government to better understand what my role and my purpose and my way of participating in this greater cause would be. And I'm here because, like you, Portland is my home. It's the city I love, it's the city I was born in, and it's the city I'll die in. And I want to make sure that Portland lives up to its potential, not just for people of influence or people who shout the loudest or people who write the biggest checks, but for everybody. That's the cause. Which brings me to my values. I believe in fairness. I believe in justice. I believe that how we treat the most vulnerable amongst us defines who we are. I believe that prosperity should not be accessible by only a few. I believe prosperity should be accessible to the whole community. I believe that diversity is a strength and that immigration is an advantage. I believe that ultimately all of us want the same things for ourselves, for our families, and for our community. And I believe that there is no problem that we can't solve if we stick together, if we have each other's backs, if we bring the best of our collective courage and wisdom. And I know that I have a role to play in making sure that Portland is one of the few cities in this nation that can show the public that we can be hopeful, that we can show results, and that we can thrive together, even in these uncertain times. That's what I believe, and that's why I am here as your mayor. It's equally important for me to note that I don't stand alone. It's important for me to note that I have a city council. They're great people. Commissioners Fish, Hardesty, Fritz, and Udaley. We're doing great work together. We bring different perspectives and skills and lived experiences to the table. No, we don't always agree, but more often than not, we do. And what we all have in common is we have all agreed to dedicate the best years of our lives to serving the city that we love. I know for a lot of people, things aren't easy right now. Things aren't easy. We live in a time of confusion, of anxiety and fear. Our community is undergoing breathtaking change, and sometimes the pace of that change can be jarring to many. I understand that too. We're no longer a small city. For better or worse, we are becoming a large city. And with that status comes large city problems. Portland, I am confident that this is a pivotal moment, and the actions that we take today can sometimes mean the difference between life or death. The most clear example of this, of course, is how we address the humanitarian crisis unfolding on our streets, the homeless crisis. At a time when Portland is exploding with development, at a time when our economy is strong, some people in our community continue to slip farther and farther behind. Fact, the homeless situation that we're seeing on our streets today is as the result, it's the cumulative result of multiple system failures. It's a complex issue and it requires complex solutions. It's the direct result of decades of inadequate investments in affordable housing, of continued federal disinvestment, a failure to create pathways for low-income individuals in our community to gain access to a labor pool that is increasingly required to be a skilled labor pool. And it's a result of our ongoing policies around criminal justice that we must hold up to the light of day. These are daunting issues before us. Again, nothing here is easy. But I don't tell you this to overwhelm you. I tell you this to underscore the urgency with which we're responding to this crisis and to assure you that I believe that we are on the right path. To begin with, none of us are doing this work alone. We have a massive community of tireless, selfless, dedicated, awesome people in our neighborhood associations, in our nonprofit associations, in our government, in our business community, and they're all working strategically together to make progress on this issue. The partnership that we have with Multnomah County through the Joint Office of Homeless Services and the Home for Everyone Collaborative, this is an unprecedented, nationally recognized, effective model of coordination and partnership across different sectors and across different jurisdictions. Other communities from around the nation have taken notice, and they look to Portland to learn from this coordinated approach to increasing housing opportunities through strategic investments. That's what this is all about: partnership, innovation, and progress. I know you get it. I know this because the people of this community have twice stepped forward to pass substantial housing bonds. The first time a few years ago for the Portland Housing Bond, and then more recently for the Regional Housing Bond. This because we want everyone in this community to ultimately have the chance to live in safe, stable housing in neighborhoods that offer both opportunity and a strong sense of community. When it passed in 2016, Portland's housing bond was the single largest general obligation bond issuance in the entire history of the city of Portland. And it was the first time that we had ever issued bonds specifically and exclusively for the purpose of creating affordable housing. Just think about that for a moment. The bond, the Portland bond, was aimed at creating 1,300 units of affordable housing over a 7-year time frame with a focus on people with very low incomes on one hand and families with small children on the other. And here we are only about 2.5 years into this process, and we're already more than halfway towards fulfilling that promise. We're moving quickly, we're moving efficiently, and we're moving with a sense of purpose. Right now, at this very moment, it's already making an impact on the lives of people in this community. There are 6 projects that have already been identified. They're either completed or they're in progress, representing over 660 units of affordable housing throughout the community. What about the chronically homeless? I get asked this all the time. The people who are on the streets, who've been there the longest, the people who have multiple, often issues, sometimes they live with mental health, sometimes addiction, how do we help them? Best practice shows us, and results show us, that the best practice is what's called supportive housing. That's when you not only combine low-income housing or government-subsidized housing alone, but you combine it with services that people need to be successful in that housing. So it might be drug and alcohol treatment, it might be mental health services, it might be other things. You combine the services with the housing. That's supportive housing. It's expensive. It's hard to bring it to fruition, but it's a lot less expensive than allowing those same individuals to continually cycle through various social services, whether it's hospitals, whether it's shelters, whether it's the criminal justice system. This is the way to go. And I'm very proud of the fact that we have added more than 600 units of supportive housing, either already open or in progress now. That means people like Tomas and Camilla, and their names have obviously been changed for privacy reasons, they can get the stability they need to overcome their life's trials. Tomas was diagnosed with cancer. Community workers referred Tomas and Camilla to a mobile supportive housing team that's run by one of our many partners, Join. They provide housing for people who are homeless, but they also provide services. I got to tell you this, Tomas and Camilla, at the time Join found them, they were living in a moldy garage, and they were one step away from ending up on the streets. So Join jumped in, they got to work, and they found doctors who spoke Spanish, they found a health advocate, they found a hospice nurse, then they helped them reconnect with their extended family to give them some stability and give them other supporters who could help them through this difficult time. And then they helped the couple find a one-bedroom affordable housing unit. So it was the combination of the housing with the services that was so successful. Why is this apartment possible? Why are these services possible? It's because of you. You are the ones who stepped forward and provided the bond that was used to secure that affordable housing unit. And I've got to tell you this isn't unique to Tomas and Camilla. This is just one story. When I tell you that the city helps thousands of people to overcome their obstacles, this is just one example of what I mean. This is where your money is going. Programs, services, and housing units that lift those up who need it the most and into stability. There's more good news. Last year was a record year for the Portland Housing Bureau, 2018. We have people from the Housing Bureau here. They delivered over 800 units of affordable housing, and 2019 is on track to be an even better year, with 1,000 units expected to have opened their doors by the end of 2019. So that's 1,900 more units that we will have opened by the end of this year. I don't like to bury people with statistics, especially at this hour in the day, but sometimes just a few statistics are worth mentioning. And these are the ones that I want you to take home with. Last year, we moved more than 6,000 people out of homelessness and into housing. We prevented nearly 7,500 people who were identified at being at the greatest risk of becoming homeless. We prevented those 7,500 people from becoming homeless in the first place. We've doubled our shelter capacity, and we've redesigned how those shelters work so that they work better. It's often more effective to find ways to move people quickly out of shelter and into housing than it is going through the lengthy and often contentious process of opening new shelters, although we do that too with our partnership with Multnomah County. And that's why this is our focus. And again, we don't do it alone. Our nonprofit partners have stepped up and continue to step up, and many of them are here in the room tonight, and I appreciate that. REACH CDC, Do Good Multnomah, Central City Concern, the Native American Rehabilitation Association, and many, many others offer affordable housing throughout the entirety of this community. Why, just a few days ago, on Friday night, I had the opportunity to join Rose CDC and Apano and others for the grand opening of the Orchards of 82nd Avenue, an affordable housing building which ushers in a new focus on equitable development along the Division Transit Corridor. And this development is not only exciting and it's beautiful, and I hope you all have the time to see it, it underscores our commitment to both revitalizing and preventing displacement in East Portland. Thank you. Our business partners are also stepping up in a big way. Some, for example, are working on the badly needed navigation center that you're seeing being constructed right now down on NATO. That'll connect individuals with tailored services that they will need to help get them off the streets, and we thank the business community for that. And our faith communities, they're stepping up too, like Imago Dei, who donated their facility again this past winter as an emergency shelter. And like St. Mark's, Imago Dei is in the house, and St. Mark's Lutheran Church, whose parking lot is being developed into a city and county-funded pilot project, the goal of which is to help homeless veterans in our community. We thank St. Mark's Lutheran Church and so many others. And all of you are stepping up too. So much of what we've been able to accomplish as Portlanders is because time and time again, you, Portland, you stood up for affordable housing at the ballot box and entrusted us with substantial new resources. And I hope you will agree that we have deployed those resources wisely and to their best advantage for people who need those resources in this community. You also voted to amend the state constitution through the passage of Ballot Measure 102. And what Ballot Measure 102 allows us to do is take a little bit of public resource on one hand and invest it alongside a lot of institutional or private sector funding to maximize the amount of affordable housing that we can create in our community. And I'm pleased to announce that we're taking immediate action to capitalize on this opportunity. Tomorrow, the Portland Housing Bureau will release the Bond Opportunity Solicitation, the first solicitation to take advantage of this new legal authority. The solicitation makes $70 million in bond funding available for new construction projects, property acquisition, and the rehabilitation of existing buildings for permanently affordable housing. In total, we expect this funding opportunity to produce up to 600 units of affordable housing. This is how we lay the foundation for real and lasting change together, through partnership, innovation, and leadership, and by marshaling our collective courage to reimagine the future of our community. There's more to do. It's unacceptable to me, and I know it's unacceptable to you too, that in 2019, a person's race continues to determine their earnings potential, their economic opportunities, their health outcomes, or whether they can even realize the dream of owning a home. As we address the housing crisis, we must recognize the role that systematic discrimination in government policies and business practices have played in limiting economic opportunities and housing options for people of color in our community. That's on us. That's why, beyond producing housing units, we're leveraging our partnerships with culturally specific agencies to better address the needs of communities of color because they are closer to understanding those needs, and we listen to them because they have the eyes and the ears of the community. They help us with immigrant and refugee populations who have been disproportionately impacted by this housing crisis and a lack of access to affordable housing. And that's why we're dedicating resources to culturally specific homebuyer counseling and education to assist more families from communities of color to becoming first-time homeowners. And through the Northeast Housing Strategy, we are confronting our own culpability in the lasting harm that was done to the historic communities in North and Northeast Portland, and most acutely to African Americans in our city as a result of previous development and urban renewal efforts. This is what you elected me to do, to undo generations of harm to marginalized communities and to prioritize where our limited dollars are going to have the greatest impact. Thanks to all of you in the city of Portland and to our many, many partners, we helped 35,000 people stay in housing, return to housing, find shelter, get access to services, and find jobs just in the last fiscal year. 35,000 people, and that's not a small number. Now, we know we have a long way to go before this crisis is turned around. We know that. And we know that there are still significant challenges ahead of us. We can't deny that. We know that the problem could seem to get worse before it gets better. But because of everything you just heard me say, we're not giving up. We're here. We're determined. We're unified. And we're ready. Now, let's talk about our Portland Police Bureau, because we need to have a candid conversation about our police, and I thank the men and women of the Portland Police Bureau for being here this evening. First of all, we need to distinguish the truths from the untruths. Fact: officers are tasked with a job that is difficult, often thankless, and dangerous. They risk their lives to serve and protect our community. They protect our rights. Fact: we're at a critical time in our Bureau. Calls for service continue to increase, but staffing is decreasing due to retirements and a competitive job market, just two of many reasons. Fact: since becoming mayor, I've met many selfless, honorable, and giving officers, and I strongly support them in their work. But it's also important to acknowledge that the role of policing is changing, and it needs to evolve because the needs of our community continue to evolve too. As police commissioner, yes, it is my job to recognize our Bureau's good work, and I hope you see me doing that. But it is also my job to hold the Bureau and myself as police commissioner accountable to the public that we serve. That's why I've asked Chief Danielle Outlaw, and Chief, I appreciate your being here tonight, to make sure that we're policing our diverse community equitably and fairly. I know the majority understands that when it comes to matter of policing, there's very little that's clear-cut, and I know the majority of people in our city understand that our officers serve us every day, often thanklessly. Officers like Bill Olenbrook of North Precinct. He's a trained crisis negotiator with the Portland Police Bureau. And he talked, imagine doing this job. He talked a 20-year-old man off the top spire of the St. John's Bridge. This young man was in crisis. He was having the worst moment of his life. And he was determined to jump nearly 2,000 feet to his death. When Officer Olenbrook first arrived, he relied on his training, but he also relied on his values. And he was able to connect with the man. He said, I found a human connection with him. And he was able to find common ground with him. Imagine trying to do that on a spire. The conversation turned into one of finding hope and finding purpose and reason for living. And ultimately, the young man chose to come down from that spire. And Officer Olenbrook wasn't alone. There were other police officers and sergeants who were very, very actively involved. But this is the kind of work our officers do every single day, often thanklessly and without any sort of public acknowledgement whatsoever. Now, in a city of more than 600,000 people, I know many of you understand this and are largely supportive of our police, but there are still many in this community who fear them. I understand that as well, and that's why I'm determined to work with the Police Bureau to change that. Again, that is on us. So, what's being done to address some of these real concerns, for example, of bias in the Police Bureau? And the answer is, a lot's being done. Thanks to the leadership of the Chief Outlaw, we're making significant progress. She brought in procedural justice training and implicit bias training for all of our officers. Police officer use of force is down across the board. PPB also beefed up its equity team, significantly increased transparency over the last 2 years, and transitioned away from the gang enforcement team methodology towards the gun violence reduction team. And we've added resources to this effort, and we've shifted the team's efforts towards gun violence. We also beefed up the behavioral health unit and the service coordination team so that if officers are called to a situation where somebody's in crisis on our streets, they're better able to handle those crisis situations. And of course, we also made crime reports for crime victims free. You asked us for more police accountability, and you said you wanted more opportunities for the community to directly engage with the police on policy. So we created the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing. This is where Bureau officials and the community get together in the same room, and this is the opportunity, one of many, for the public to hold me as the police commissioner and our police bureau accountable for our policy decisions. You asked for a homeless community liaison in the bureau. We funded that position. We created it. We've scoped it, and we're about to announce our first hire for that position. You asked us to find a model where armed officers aren't always the ones who respond to non-emergency situations. You asked, so we created the Public Safety Support Specialists, the PS3 position. You asked us to look at different models where service providers and mental health experts respond to calls for service for those who are experiencing homelessness or in crisis instead of sending in armed officers. I'm getting lots of emails on this subject. Thank you for those. I want you to know this. I am 100% committed to that approach. I believe my city council is 100% supportive of that approach. I know that the Portland Police Bureau is supportive of that approach, and I believe the community is supportive of that approach. And that's why, in the coming days, I'll be announcing the first steps that we'll be taking to make that a reality. These actions are unprecedented for our city. And it takes unprecedented action because we're living in unprecedented times. Now, let's pivot to the economy, because I have a lot to say about this. Portland, as you all know, is experiencing generationally low unemployment. And we've all seen the economic prosperity over the last few years. And we've all seen the data around unemployment numbers. This is, of course, great. This is great. But we also know that way too many of our neighbors are still struggling. They're still struggling. And the wealth that's been created during this economic expansion has not been shared. It has not been shared equitably. Communities of color, especially African American residents and Native American residents, are not experiencing the benefit of that growth. That's what the data shows us. The scale of economic opportunity is out of balance, and we need to take intentional steps to rebalance those scales. It's easy for us to acknowledge this crisis. It's a lot harder for us to solve it. The growing divide prompted me to just reach out to the community and ask a wide variety of advisors and business owners and organizational leaders to help me figure out how collectively we could work together to capitalize on this healthy economy and intentionally foster more broadly shared economic prosperity in Portland. So what are we doing? Here's what we landed on. We're helping women and people of color strengthen and scale their businesses in our community. We're incentivizing companies to create more middle-wage jobs and increasing access to workforce training programs. We're creating more access to startup capital for minority entrepreneurs. And with the help of my Council of Economic Advisors, and many of you are here in the room today, thank you for your service. With their help, we want to take this work to scale. With an unprecedented coalition of more than a dozen business organizations and multicultural organizations, we have launched Portland Means Progress. This is a new initiative that ensures that Portland will remain one of America's most vibrant cities. Portland Means Progress will enable local companies, whether they have 3 employees or 23,000 employees, to grow and to help Portland grow more equitably by doing several things. First, promising to pay all of their employees at least $15 an hour. Second of all, creating internships and job opportunities for underrepresented youth. Third, increase purchasing from diverse businesses, businesses owned by people of color and operated by people of color in our community. Pick them first for partnership. And finally, changing their own corporate cultures so that they are more diverse and more inclusive in their business practices. They're not just stepping forward, these companies, because they know it's the right thing to do. They're also doing it because it's smart business. We all have something to gain from this. And I encourage all companies in this city to consider stepping forward and being part of Portland Means Progress. I think we can all agree that the scales of opportunity have been imbalanced for far too long, and now we're working together with real action to change that. Because we don't just believe in creating jobs in this city. We believe in creating a city where economic prosperity is shared. That's the goal. For many of you, you chose to live in Portland because you're deeply invested in building your future here. And it's sometimes not easy to see the progress that's being made. So let me just share a couple of things over the next couple of minutes. These are positive results, because I like leaving you with positive results. A few months ago, I pledged at a press conference that Portland would be the cleanest city in America. And the reason I did that was because I was concerned about the amount of litter I was seeing on our sidewalks, in our roads, in our waterways, in our parks, our beautiful parks, and our greenways. And I thought we could do something about it, that we could do better. Well, we brought together a whole host of community organizations, and since the summer of last year, we've collected over 2.5 million tons of litter in our city through these new initiatives. 2.5 million tons. And because you wanted to help, I was actually really energized. I like picking up trash. I find it actually cathartic as well as helpful, and I was surprised how many other people in the city of Portland feel this way, because you wanted to engage, you wanted to roll up your sleeves, you wanted to help. In partnership with Solve, we created the Keep It Pretty Rose City Initiative to get Portlanders the opportunity to help clean our city, and we've seen remarkable results in every corner of this city. As I've mentioned, we've invested record numbers in shelter bed creation, connection to services, and housing to help alleviate the homeless crisis. We're looking to the future by deploying new technologies and innovations like 5G technology. This will help us advance internet connections, and from the City of Portland's perspective, what this means is we'll be able to better serve the public. And at a critical time for our environment, we continue to lead the nation with the implementation of a comprehensive strategy to address the threat of global climate change through our ever-evolving climate action plan. Our City Council took a strong stance to reduce waste and its impact on the environment by passing legislation limiting single-use plastics like straws and plastic utensils. We committed the city of Portland to transitioning to 100% renewable energy throughout the community by the year 2050. And we're working hard within our bureaus to develop and implement strategies to reach this goal. I understand that despite some of these positive things, there's still a lot of fear in our community. I acknowledge that. I hear it, I acknowledge it, and I understand it. And I understand that we're living in a time of uncertainty and anxiety and fear. And I also understand that there's a broad consensus that the politics of this country has somehow gone off the rails. I understand that. The moral centering of this country has been in jeopardy, I believe, after relentless attacks on what I believe to be our shared values. Those include attacks against our immigrant community, a strong pushback and reluctance to enact common sense gun legislation, and a lack of urgent commitment to addressing the very real threat of global climate change, amongst others. And for at least the next 2 years, I don't expect to see much change in Washington, D.C. I really don't. And that's why it's more important than ever for cities to take the lead. Cities like Portland are leading the way on the biggest issues of our time, and I'm really proud of that. You should be too. And this is why I am so thankful for the work of our commissioners, like Commissioner Nick Fish. He's a stalwart champion for the neediest communities. I'm proud to work with him. We've set an ambitious goal to create 2,000 units of supportive housing over the next 10 years. And I'm proud to say we're ahead of our goals at this point. Commissioner Hardesty. Commissioner Joanne Hardesty, with her deep commitment to social justice and the environment. Because of her work on the Clean Energy Fund, we're going to be able to fast-track our just transition goals associated with our 100% renewable energy pledge. Commissioner Chloe Eudaly, with her work reaffirming Portland's status as a sanctuary city, she was responsible for convening a community-based task force to identify the highest priorities for immigrant and refugee communities. And we're going to miss her, but she's here for a while. Commissioner Amanda Fritz, who until recently was our Parks Commissioner. Just in the time since I've been mayor, 5 new parks have opened in our city under her leadership. And if you have not been to the Gateway Discovery Park in East Portland, it is a must-see. And Commissioner Fritz will probably agree to give you a personalized tour if you're interested. I'm so thankful for all the public and private partners spread out throughout every corner of this city and state, like our 30,000 veterans who, by living their value of service, honor, and strength, inspire the rest of us. Thank you, veterans, for your unending service. Like our LGBTQ community, and right now my thoughts are especially with the transgender community, who by living their truth every single day inspire the rest of us to do the same. We see you, we hear you, and we love you. Thank you. I know that I could go on and on and on about the partnerships, but I don't want to because I think we've only rented this space for about an hour and a half, and the list is very, very long. But if you didn't hear your name, I want to thank you for your service. Portland, we're not going anywhere. We will be in the trenches for you every single day to make sure that we build a Portland that is welcoming and prosperous for all. Just think about where we're sitting here today in this iconic space. You might be wondering, why did we pick the Veterans Memorial Coliseum for the State of the City speech? Well, that's because for me, this building represents something important. It represents Portland's storied past. Just through those doors, right there, is where the Portland Trailblazers won the 1977 NBA championships. In the same space, that's where President Barack Obama and the Dalai Lama and others thrilled thousands of Portlanders. One can only imagine what the future is going to bring. To me, this building doesn't just connect us to our past, it also connects us to all of the opportunities that we're going to have and share together. Because, like us, this building is a building in transition. It represents our past, but it also represents the hope for the future. So, I want to bring my remarks to a close today by bringing back the story I shared with you at the beginning of my remarks. I often think back to the men and women that I met on the streets of New York decades ago. And I wonder, where are they now? That was over 30 years ago. Where are they now? Did they ever reconnect with their families? Did they ever overcome the obstacles that they were facing? Did they find the help they needed and had hoped for? Are they even still alive? And the truth is, I don't know. I don't know. I owe them a debt of gratitude, because if they weren't there fighting their battles then, 3 decades ago, I would not be here today fighting mine and fighting alongside all of you. I can't lay claim to knowing what happened to them. All I can do is control what happens to the people in our community today and make sure that they have a better future. I want to say this, being mayor, it's not easy. Surprise, right? But guess what? I was never under any illusion that it would be. This is by far the most meaningful most meaningful work in my life. This is my life's purpose. This is what I want to do. The challenges are many, and frankly, the resources and the tools at our disposal to solve those challenges often don't seem up to the scope or the scale of the problems. But that's why I'm here. And that's why I asked my wife, Katrina, and my daughter, Quinlan, to join me on this journey, for better or for worse. I'm here for the next generation. I'm glad to see so many students here today. I'm here for the next generation. I hear you, to help you create the best possible future for you. And what motivates me and keeps me focused and gives me optimism about the future is I know that I'm not in this alone. I have a fantastic city council. I have 5,000 amazing public servants in the city of Portland, and I have you. I have this community, the entire community working together to solve our problems, to lay the foundations of a city that will serve as a beacon of prosperity, inclusion, and hope for generations to come. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to be part of it. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. As is tradition, thank you. As is tradition, I will take questions until Eileen tells me that the rent is not paid up and we have to leave. Yes, sir, Andrew. And Eileen will pass a microphone around so you don't have to pop up or anything. She'll find you.
Thank you, Mayor. Andrew Hone with the Portland Business Alliance. And first off,
Hey, Andrew.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for bringing us all together today, and thank you for your remarks. I just want to say that we appreciate the challenges that this city faces. We understand the challenges that you as mayor face, and we in the business community just want to say something very simple, that we recognize the challenges that the city faces in balancing the remarkable needs of our business, our community as a whole, while at the same time looking out for businesses that need policies that support their ability to grow, and that we all grow together. So I just want to recognize that and thank you for your partnership.
Thank you, Andrew.
Absolutely.
Right back at you.
And two things, question and then comment. First question to you is really, what can we do more as a business community? What else can we do to partner with you, your office? And then lastly, to close it out, is go Blazers.
Well, I'll start with that. I expect that we're going to have our second NBA championship coming up very, very shortly. And Sean Lee told me he's willing to wait, but not very long. So I think we want to get it done this year. Second of all, the business community has already been very helpful on a whole host of issues around the litter collection, with the Clean Start program, helping chronically homeless folks get back on their feet and get employment opportunities under their belt, with the new the navigation center that's being opened off of NATO. So I actually feel that the business community is doing many good things. I would like to see the business community continue to push hard around equity, and that's why I'm very happy for those in the business community who have supported the Portland Means Progress initiative, and continue to hold us accountable, as you do. I appreciate your remarks today, but you do hold us accountable, and I have learned over the last 2.5 years, sometimes you have to listen to your critics, hear what they're saying, hear what they're coming from, because in every criticism, no matter how withering it is, there's always a grain of truth. There's always something you can take out of it that's meaningful. So work with us, partner with us, help us, lead, and hold us accountable. Those are how you can help. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Michael Llewellyn, Portland Trail Blazers. Thanks for the shout out.
Good to see you.
Also, as chairman of the board for the Urban League of Portland. Do you feel that there's enough common ground between your agenda at the city level and what's going on in Salem, knowing we have such dysfunction in Washington, that you can work together with the state on some of your goals?
Yes, excellent question, and the answer is unequivocally yes. I believe you will find that although the city of Portland is technically not involved in education, you're going to see us enthusiastically supportive of strategies to help fund education. Certainly when it comes to housing, we're very interested in support for housing. Federal dollars come to the state, and then we advocate for a lot of those dollars to come to Multnomah County and the city of Portland to help us address our homeless crisis and our affordable housing situation. We have found common ground around public safety. As you know, we have a bit of a quirk in our system that makes it really easy for people to steal cars and get away with it. And so we've gone with our police bureau and others down to Salem to try and close that loophole, which seems to be holding us back. And when it comes to the environment, we feel that we're aligned around advocacy. The area where I think we're maybe a little ahead is around economic prosperity and shared economic prosperity. I feel that because we're closer to the local organizations and we're closer to the neighborhoods and the communities, we're maybe a little nimbler and a little more responsive to those needs. But on the whole, I would say our partnership with the state is very strong. Now, the legislative session isn't over yet. So ask me again about mid-June, and maybe I'll give you a different answer. But as of today, it feels really good. It feels very positive, and I'm optimistic. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Ethan Eisner. I'm a junior at Wilson High School and a member of the Portland Youth Climate Council.
Thank you.
First, I just want to thank you for all that you're doing for our community. We really do appreciate it. I want to ask a question about climate change because that's what I'm here for. If we don't solve climate change, our planet's essentially gone. So my question to you is, what are the concrete things that you're doing to stop the destruction of our planet? Because the clean energy resolution is just that, a resolution. We want to do something, but it doesn't give concrete steps. So I'm wondering what the city of Portland is doing now. Thank you.
Excellent. So we are doing many things. The Climate Action Plan has no fewer than 148 concrete initiatives that we are taking that we address climate. It's everything from the built environment to transportation strategies, fuels used, energy sources that are used, limiting our waste stream, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Some of the things I'm the most proud of recently, definitely our commitment to transition to 100% renewable energy. That's not a theoretical objective or target. We're already working with utilities, and we're already working with partners in the community to make sure that that becomes a reality. One area where we could partner, you and all of us here, is the state still preempts us on diesel emissions. I would very much like to get rid of that state preemption. I believe we would be much, much more aggressive with regard to diesel emissions and air quality if that preemption was eliminated, but we still passed an important piece of legislation around clean diesel, and that will be funded in my upcoming budget in a few days. Other areas where we're working, trying to limit the waste stream, and you heard about our plastic initiative. And that's an area where, again, we're working really, really closely, not only with the environmental community, but also the business community to find the right solutions there. But there are many, many ways that we can be engaged. We're looking for more resources to help us with solar and alternative energy. Commissioner Hardesty worked really, really hard on that clean energy initiative that will enable communities of color to be able to participate along with everybody else intentionally as we go to 100% renewable energy. So there are many concrete things that we are doing and that we will do and that we want to continue to work in partnership with you. And we appreciate you and the students taking the lead on this, because on this, as well as gun safety, frankly, the most important leadership is coming from our youth, because you understand, as you just said, this is your planet you're going to inherit. And I thank you for being here. And thanks for the work you're doing at Wilson High School.
Well, my name is Namesh Chan. I go to Roosevelt, and I'm a freshman. I'm part of the CTE classes. And my question to you is, how can we help? Because we take intro to woodwork, construction, and how could we help building homes for homeless people to help you guys out?
Oh, boy, that's a great question. So, first of all, I would love for you, I will give you a mediocre answer, and then my staff will tell me later, you could have told them about this and this and this and this. So please make sure that I have your contact information before you leave so that I can connect you with all the opportunities. But we have been working very hard with partners in the community. We have Proud Ground, and Diane Lynn is in the back. We have Habitat for Humanity. They've been working very closely with us for many, many years to help build housing in the community. A number of our faith organizations in this community have their own initiatives and efforts, and they would welcome volunteers. So there's lots of ways that you can get personally involved if you really want to roll up your sleeves and actually help build stuff. And I know there's more than enough work for you out there, and you have that young, youthful energy, which would be greatly appreciated. There's other ways that you can help too, and that's just through advocacy. Continue to help move us in the right direction. And when you see the opportunities, push us. The youth voice is very, very important, and it's one where it was galvanized, I believe, interestingly enough, through the school safety initiative, but it has expanded into other areas, and the environment is certainly one where you're going to have to continue to keep holding us accountable. And then on the housing front, any help, any support that you can provide by supporting those organizations or others would be greatly appreciated. And then when you get old enough to turn 18, support us and support the community who's already stepped up on these housing bonds and these constitutional amendments. It sounds like boring stuff, and it doesn't make for the greatest speechifying, but it's really important to have those resources to actually be able to do something. And then last but not least, as you evolve politically, while all politics is local, not all dollars are. And the dollars that we're missing right now around housing are the ones that aren't coming from the federal government and haven't been since the 1980s. Support for very low-income housing through HUD has declined by 85% since the mid-1980s. We've got to turn that around. And as you see this homeless crisis expand on the West Coast, I think you're going to see more presidential candidates talk about this and make this an issue. And the youth movement, I think, is going to be extremely important in 2020, not just for the presidential race, but also the composition of the House and the Senate. And however you want to vote, I hope you will think long and hard about the issues that are important to you, whether it's gun safety, whether it's the environment, whether it's housing, and make the right choices.
How you doing? My name is Napoleon Hodges. I'm the Executive Director of the National Association for Black Veterans. I've been meeting with one of your aides, Contran. He's indicated that you have a firm commitment to putting actions behind the words of supporting the veteran communities and the veterans of color. I want to put you on the spot and ask you, what do you have in mind?
Napoleon, I apologize. The initiative that we're working on right now with Multnomah County is the one that I think is the most interesting. As you know, prior to my becoming mayor, Portland was the first city in the United States certified to have ended homelessness for veterans, but that was through a very limited source of funding through the Obama administration. Those resources were deployed, and now we're seeing an uptick in homeless veterans on our street. So we're looking for very specific innovative programs, and the one that we're looking at with St. Mark's Lutheran Church, I think will be a very important pilot program. It is exclusively focused on veterans. We at the City of Portland have also implemented a veterans preference policy in our hiring. So, we are a major employer in and of our own right in this community, and there is a requirement that veterans be moved to the finalist pool at the City of Portland. That usually means you're getting an interview, so we can hear your story, we can hear what your aspirations are, we can hear what your skill sets are. And I have found, and Con is a perfect example, that veterans are excellent team players, and they're leaders in all capacities. So those are just two ways that we're working with veterans. And I appreciate you being here. Thanks for everything you've done. Thank you, Napoleon. There's somebody way over here. Very good. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Mayor.
Hi.
My name is Daniel Pack. I'm a sophomore at Portland State University. I'm curious how, in the initiative to create more affordable housing and the fight against homelessness, you encompass the issue of population growth as well.
Well, the first thing I do is every time I go to a conference anywhere in the United States, I say, "Hi, I'm Ted Wheeler. I'm the mayor of Portland, Oregon, and it rains like heck every single day." That's what I tell them. So when your friends call you and say Portland's the most amazing place in the world, tell them not necessarily. We love them to come and visit, but you know how the rest of the sentence goes. I'm not really sure I like the idea of government getting into the business of population growth, and so I don't talk about it. I don't have particular policies around population growth. What I do is I manage it. And when I think about managing population growth, the first thing I do is I look at the big picture. We have a circle drawn around our metropolitan area, the urban growth boundary. I believe that that urban growth boundary is an excellent policy idea, and I will fight to keep the urban growth boundary intact. It can move, it can change, it can evolve, but I like the idea of protecting wildlands and farmlands outside of the urban growth boundary. The flip side of that equation is, if we want to protect those lands on the outside of the boundary, that means we have to accept density within the urban growth boundary. And I think for a long time that was sort of a theoretical check the box. People could say, "Oh yeah, I get that," but now we're seeing enough people come here that it's no longer theoretical. And through our last planning process that the City Council went through, we voted to support more height and more density. And now we're looking at something called residential infill that will look at different kinds of housing, a different array, duplexes, triplexes, garden apartments, quads, potentially ways to have more housing in the same space. We created a pathway for what are called auxiliary dwelling units, which we used to call them granny flats, but what we don't anymore, we call them auxiliary dwelling units. So the question is, how do we get people here without destroying the character of the city that we love so much? And that's thoughtful growth, thoughtful development, thinking about affordability, making sure that we're not contributing to displacement. So when I mentioned that development, the 82nd at Orchards, the Orchards at 82nd, that is an intentional effort to not push people out, but rather to keep people in place. Because a lot of the people, for example, in East Portland have already been displaced from North and Northeast Portland. We don't want to displace them again through development. So we have to balance our desire to have the city continue to thrive and be economically prosperous against the very real needs of affordability. And this is a long answer, I'm sorry, but there's one more piece I want to add to it, believe it or not. I have the example of San Francisco to go by. And we saw what unrestrained economic growth can do to a community. And if you're not intentional about maintaining an array of affordable housing options, what you can inadvertently do is push your arts and your culture and your culinary communities and your maker communities outside of the city. And when you think about what our competitive advantages are, and when you think about what we're known for, the character of this city, if we lose those things because we do not plan intentionally for increased population, I think we lose a lot of what makes this city special.
Okay, we have time for one more question. I'll try.
Thank God it's not the auditor.
Hi, Mayor. My name is Jan Zuckerman, and I also am a mentor with the Portland Youth Climate Council.
Thank you.
And a member of Extinction Rebellion. And I've been working for many months with many different groups, helping to put on community forums about Zenith Energy. And I've also been planting several beautiful gardens out there, trying to draw attention to the fact that now we've become an export terminal for tar sands oil, from the extraction to all the movement through our cities and towns, the Columbia River Gorge, to our Willamette River, which is a liquefaction zone on a fault line where we store all of the fossil fuels, or at least 95% for the state of Oregon.
That's right.
And now we have an increase in tar sands oil coming through our city, our proud city, our green city, which is now the only export terminal, or one. I think it's the only one for oil. And I'm wondering, you talked a lot about courage, and that it takes courage to do what you're doing. And I'm asking you, what courageous steps that will you be taking to address this so that we can feel safe and we can address the very real catastrophic climate change that we are facing right now?
Yeah, thank you very much, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness of your question. I'll answer it this way. First of all, I want to say that philosophically, we are in alignment. The demonstrators at Zenith are protesting the idea that we would have more oil trains going through our Columbia River Gorge scenic area, through congested residential neighborhoods, and potentially for the purpose of simply being exported to foreign markets. I do not want the city of Portland to be an export colony for fossil fuels. That is not a good economic equation for this city, and it's not in comport with our values around climate action. Now, having said that, as the mayor and the police commissioner, I always have to say that while we support demonstration and we support the right of people to exercise their First Amendment rights, we also ask people to abide by the law. The strategy that we're currently engaging in, last week we met with all of our regional partners, so that included Multnomah County, that included all of the city bureaus that have a direct overlay with this, planning and sustainability, the Fire Bureau, the Police Bureau, the Transportation Bureau, and others. And other government jurisdictions like Metro were also present at the table. The first thing we did was scoped out what are our actual authorities and what has Zenith actually been permitted to do. And we're going through the evaluation of, are they actually doing what they were permitted to do? So we're approaching this from that perspective. We are also meeting with environmental groups, and we're meeting with labor unions to get their perspectives and their ideas on this. But whatever I do, it will have to be legal, and it will have to be justifiable from a legal perspective. And so that's the approach that I am taking. And I will simply say I appreciate and support the values that are behind your protest. But again, I ask everybody to protest both peacefully, as you have been, and legally. Thank you for being here. There is one more person I wanted to acknowledge, and I realized my oversight as I was cracking a joke. We also have an elected auditor, and we have Mary Hull Caballero here with us today, and she does a great job as the auditor of our city. Thank you, Mayor. All right, so with that, there is a reception. I believe it's over there. Jennifer, is that correct? That's our reception over there. Feel free to stay as long as you want. And the last words today are what? Go Blazers! All right, thank you, everyone.